Welcome back to the GameLink podcast. I'm your host, Lebbi, and as always, I'm joined by my buddy, Elmer.
Hater hoder, everybody.
Today, I'm really excited to be talking about The Last of Us. Man, am I excited. But before we do that, how have the last couple weeks for you been, Elmer?
Oh, dear God. It has been one whole bunch of fun that followed after another, man. The intermittent either ice and or snowstorms here in the state of Minnesota, which is always lovely, and or just working a little bit of overtime here, there, and everywhere. I cannot, let's put it this way. I can't even remember when we did our last episode, to be honest with you.
It was a couple weeks ago. We talked about Uncharted.
Well, I remember Uncharted, but I couldn't remember if that was 2 weeks ago, if that was 3 weeks ago, or if that was a full-on month ago.
Yeah, no, that was only a couple weeks ago. Yeah, because you did the trivia thing last week, right?
Oh, that's right. Okay, yes. No, I did, yeah 2 weeks in a row there. I couldn't remember if it was 3 weeks ago. I was just like, did we do an episode right after St. Patty's Day? But
no. So yeah, what did you see? Anything good? Or?
Well, the two most recent things I got to go check out in the theaters recently. Last night I went and saw Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, which we had a hell of a lot of fun with that movie. One big joke that they had, a little inside joke during the quote-unquote game sequence during that film, had me almost in stitches in the theater there. I couldn't believe that they threw that joke in there, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm all here for it. And then the week before that, we went and saw the newest John Wick. And
I still need to see that, too.
I'm not going to lie, it's probably my second favorite one of those movies. Definitely the first one is the best, but yes, no, John Wick, Chapter 4 was incredible. Has probably one of the best action casts I've seen in a very, very long time, and with it being the last completed film of, or at least one of the last completed films of the great Lance Reddick, it was quite poignant with how they handled it in that movie. So
yeah, and you gotta love Keanu.
Whoa.
Yeah, speaking of Keanu, I rewatched the first two Bill and Ted movies.
Excellent. Is it bad? I honestly was going to say excellent, then I'm like, well, you got to throw the accent on it.
Yeah, those movies are so good, so charming. Yeah, I also rewatched Mallrats.
Oh.
I went on like an old movie kick this last couple weeks, so I watched Mallrats. I watched The Lost World, Jurassic Park, and Jumanji, the original Jumanji. With Robin Williams, not the one with The Rock. But yeah, I'm excited to see the Mario movie this week, too, hopefully. Big news, I left my job. So I've had a bunch of free time to finish up some projects and relax a little bit. And I'll be starting work again soon for somewhere else. So I'm really excited about that. Let's see what else. I finally picked up the new Need for Speed game, Unbound. That's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it, except it doesn't run very well on the Steam Deck. It crashes a lot. Yeah, and then I was telling Elmer when he got here today that I slipped down the cement steps out in front of my house last night and messed myself up pretty good, so...
As somebody who had to climb those same steps to get to where I'm at, sitting right now for this, yes, no, I can see how that might be a bit precarious. And if anything, I'm shocked you didn't fly out to the middle of the intersection.
Oh, it hurt so bad. I've been in pain all day, but that's okay. I have time to recover. Yeah, let's see. I can't really think of any big gaming news. I feel like I'm missing something. But...
it would be the release of the Resident Evil 4 remake beta.
Oh yeah, the Resident Evil 4 remake is out. Oh, they also released the port of The Last of Us on PC, but it has a ton of problems. So they'll fix that soon, I hope, because I want to replay it, but I don't want to have to install it on my PS5. So. Before we start talking about The Last of Us, this is the closest we could get to a Bill and Frank cosplay. So I gave myself my best Nick Offerman mustache and hopefully it's good enough.
I thought you said I was going as Joel. Eh,
Yeah, so The Last of Us, I've played some of the game, like in 2014 or 15, like right after it came out. But I've maybe only got like a quarter of the way through it. Got preoccupied with other things anyway. I never finished it, but now I might have motivation to go back and finish it. You haven't played it, have you?
I have not played a single lick of this game.
Yeah, because you never had a PS4 or a PS3 or.
Which is funny because now I own a PS4, but.
Yeah, well, they have the remaster on PS4, I think, still.
I'm tempted. I've got about 4 copies sitting at my work, and they're always looking me in the eye, for $9. Take us home, Barry. Take us home. It's like, okay, maybe I will.
Yeah, I would definitely play the remaster version if you have the option to.
Does that also include the DLC to it, or?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Why am I asking
so.
you? I can literally read it on at my work if.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so this game, they pretty much started working on it right after Uncharted 2 came out. So Uncharted 2 came out in 2009, which we talked about Uncharted in the last episode, so check that out if you're interested. And then they started working on The Last of Us, but they codenamed it Project Thing. And it was pretty much kept a secret for the majority of development. I think they announced it in like towards the end of 2011. But yeah, so for the first time in the company's history, Naughty Dog was split into 2 teams, which I think we talked about last week too. Naughty Dog was responsible for like Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, or no, not Ratchet and Clank, that's Insomnia. Jak and Daxter, we got
Crash Bandicoot.
Crash Bandicoot, yep. Yeah, and then the Uncharted games, but yeah, anyway. So Naughty Dog split into 2 teams to work on 2 separate projects at the same time, which is weird because usually when stuff happens like that for the first time, like everyone's spread too thin and there's a bunch of problems. I didn't read about anything like that happening, which is shocking and impressive. But yeah, one team was working on Uncharted 3, and the other team was working on The Last of Us. The co-presidents of Naughty Dog chose the director named Bruce Stanley and creative director Neil Druckmann to develop the game. Or did I say Bruce Stanley? I meant Bruce Straley. So Straley was with Naughty Dog since like 1999, so he had been there a while. And so he was chosen because of his experience. And Druckmann was there since like 2004, so not that much shorter. But he was like the talent in design kind of thing. So let's see, we have one of the designers, Ricky Cambier, cited that the video games Ico and Resident Evil 4. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ico, or
I have heard
Ico.
of it. Yep, I have heard of Ico. I remember playing the shit out of that demo at Target growing up as a kid. They had it on the PS2 there. Yeah.
It's a very atmospheric game if you've never heard of it. And then I'm sure everyone's aware of Resident Evil 4.
We should say then, though, just kind of set it up for anybody who's just like, oh, what is this Eco game that they're talking of? How could this be? We should say that was actually the first game of Project Eco, the group that later went on to do Shadow of the Colossus, as well as The Last Guardian.
Yep. So if you're familiar with those games, they're great. They're not for everyone, but I personally really liked them. But yeah, Eco and Resident Evil 4 were huge influences on the game design for The Last of Us, and that makes sense. The emotional weight of the relationship between the 2 main characters needed to be balanced with the tension of the issues in the world, and they wanted to take the character building and interaction of Eco and blend it with the tension and action of Resident Evil 4. They also made sure to exclude and change a lot of elements from the Uncharted series because they wanted The Last of Us to be a very distinct and different feeling game, even though it was still kind of like an adventure type exploration, which I think they even reused a lot of similar assets, you know. So yeah, the games are a little similar, but not quite. Um, the team actually created a new engine. I was just telling Elmer earlier that because we assumed that it was built on the same engine as Uncharted, and maybe they used the same engine for Uncharted 3. But they did build a new engine for this game, which was really heavily dependent on AI. So it was the AI was created to coordinate with the player on an intimate level, as opposed to like reacting to the action. The Ellie AI was coded to, oh gosh, how am I trying to say it? Coded to like follow the player around and be like less stressful, instead of like games up until this point, like your partner AI would always go and fight, even if you were like trying to escape or hide or something. So that was a big point of the game, to have the option to retreat, and sometimes a necessity to like trigger a bunch of zombies and retreat and like really plan stuff out. And so it was different. They also had the AI for the enemies. When they were idle, they would investigate things and they would try to, it's like they'd come up with different strategies and stuff. So if you play the same level multiple times, it would probably be different each time. So it was really cool. They tried to like achieve realism that way. Let's see. They also redid the lighting engine, which I know this was still like fairly early on into the PS3. Well, no, it was pretty late in the PS3. I take that back. In the PS3's lifetime.
Yeah, was it about 2012, 2013?
Yeah, it released in 2013.
Okay. Yeah, that would have been like really towards the end there, because the Xbox One was released. What was it, March of 2013? I know the PS4.
Yeah, the PS4 was in 2014. But yeah, so they redid the lighting engine to incorporate soft light, so that it was more like a volumetric lighting where sun would like seep through cracks in the shades and whatever else. So it looked really impressive on the PS3. And one cool thing is I never realized this or thought about it, but the weapon that you equip in the game will change the behavior of the human NPCs around you. So, like, I guess like the bigger and badder gun you have, the more intimidated NPCs would act and stuff like that. Is really interesting. The stealth system in the game was intentionally developed to make you feel like desperate. And that's one thing I do remember, and maybe that's why I didn't like the game at first, is because the whole thing is you're supposed to feel like you're lacking in supplies, and they had no cover system, so you're not like building yourself into a tank that throughout the game just gets stronger and stronger. There's no boss fights, no cover system. They just wanted you to always be moving, always be desperate, always feeling like you don't have enough supplies, and like really plan out each move. It's really interesting.
So it's third-person shooter version of Stalker, except it's it's like a AAA title compared to just being some Euro trash. So it's the good kind of jank.
Yeah. It was definitely really different for the time. I think knowing about how it's supposed to feel like that now, I might enjoy it more, because I think I remember at the time just being frustrated with it. But yeah, I definitely want to replay it now.
Because I know it's not pre-Demon Souls, but is this game pre-Dark Souls in a way, or no?
No, this is post-Dark Souls.
Okay, it is.
Yep.
Okay, because just by the way that it sounds and just how I've seen people...
no, Dark Souls. I'm thinking of Demon Souls. This is post-Demon Souls.
So it is post-Demon Souls, but it's not...
I'm not sure.
Pre-Dark Souls.
It might be maybe around the same time as Dark Souls.
But I mean, can you kind of see what I'm getting at, though? Is this kind of that same sort of, maybe not floaty, but in a way sort of very light, almost, you have to feel the controls more so than you're actually controlling the character in the game.
You can't mash a button. You got to think about everything. And I definitely have a hard time with that unless I can really focus. But I mean, and there's so much. So one thing about researching this game is there's so much information about both like the technical side of the development as well as like the casting and the directing and the acting side of development and like writing the story and stuff that I could talk forever. so I'm going to cut off talking about the technical side of things, but know that there's a lot more and it's easily findable on like Wikipedia and stuff. But I'll start getting into the story. I'll save like major spoilers till like towards the end of the podcast. But yeah, I'll get into the story a little bit. So the story came about in a really cool way. So Neil Druckmann was he was tasked with creating a video game concept. I think back in like 2004, he was asked to create a concept to present to George A. Romero, the director, who was like holding some contest for like a survival type game or something like that. Druckmann's idea was to merge the gameplay of Eco to a story set in a zombie-like apocalypse, similar to Night of the Living Dead, and with a lead character similar to John Hardigan from Sin City. So you can already kind of see the the Joel character being developed and stuff like that. But the lead character was a police officer who was tasked with protecting a young girl. But the lead character had a medical condition, and you would sometimes assume control of the girl. And this was really, really something else for that early in the 2000s too. So, unfortunately, he didn't win the contest that he entered with Romero. But
that's how we got Land of the Dead: Road to Fiddler's Green, if memory serves correct. And that game is not great.
That sounds about right. But he did complete the script for the game, and the script was turned down by an indie comic book publisher. So he ended up just sitting on the story all these years until they started working on The Last of Us. So an early version of the game was that the infection would only spread to women. And then that story followed the journey of a man protecting the only immune woman to bring her to a lab to create the cure. That concept was scrapped, particularly after female Naughty Dog employees called it misogynistic. And
I'd be pretty pissed, to be honest with you. I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, but it sounds like it was pretty close to what we got now. The infected in the game were inspired by a segment on the BBC Nature documentary Planet Earth, which was on the cordyceps fungi, which is like, I think in insects and ants and stuff, where the fungus uses the ant to like attract others or whatever, and then like grows out of its head. So that mainly infected insects and takes control of them. But obviously they just kind of turned that like, what if it ended up infecting humans? But the thing is, the game doesn't really focus on how the outbreak started or like what it really is. They kind of do like a backseat storytelling type of thing where you can kind of like pick it up in hints and stuff during the game, but they don't outright address it because they wanted the focus of the game to be like the characters and the relationship.
That's actually kind of a good way of doing the game like that, because it's like, I mean, what does it matter the fact that this was able to happen? What's better, the fact that I now have to live with this, and this is how I have to get through it. And they might, because when I was doing my research, I saw about the gas mask system in the game. I didn't even know that was part of the game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't.
I'll give it to him. That's a good way of kind of going, well, there's spores of fungi in the air. I got to get the hell away from it. So what better than a gas mask?
Yeah, it's a good idea as long as you don't eat. I think because in the show they address it as like it getting into the flour, and then being used to make food and being shipped internationally and all that stuff.
More of a physical infection than it is more like a droplet or an airborne infection. So.
Right. But yeah, so they wanted this game to feel realistic, so they actually did a bunch of research. So in researching, Neil Druckmann found a lot of inspiration from real historical events, such as the Spanish flu of 1918. So that he used that to illustrate the depths of like the self-protection and paranoia capable of humans under threat of extinction. He also used the polio epidemic from the 1880s to demonstrate the influences of socioeconomic classes when assigning blame in a disaster. So I guess that's kind of interesting that like, yeah, maybe it does feel so real because he like studied how people reacted in actual pandemics. So that's cool. So Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, they're the voice of Joel and Ellie respectively. So they don't not only voiced the characters, but they did all the motion capture for the characters also. About 85% of the game's animation was all motion capture, which is a pretty big deal for the time. I mean, this was right like 2011, 2000. I guess they started in 2009 or 10, but still for them that was a lot of motion capture. Baker and Johnson also assisted the team in developing the characters and refining the story. So because the game was built around basically Joel and Ellie's relationship, they really carefully picked who the actors were. So I believe they picked the Ashley Johnson, the character for Ellie. They chose her first, and then she like convinced them to hire Baker to do Joel because they had a good relationship already. And because they were so close, they were really able to help like write that into the characters, and it apparently worked really good. Like I know multiple people who like will not only say that this is their favorite game, but will talk about it fondly or get emotional while playing it and stuff like that. Apparently the game has a lot of uncomfortable moments. Like I don't know if you've seen the entire HBO series all the way through. They like pretty much most of that stuff is in the game too. So,
and what they show on that what they show on the series is quite unflinching in terms of what. Yeah. Well, if you were to find yourself in a post-apocalyptic world, what would you do to kind of get through it?
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of like starting to be that thing where people would think of like voice actors or video game actors separately from like Hollywood actors and film actors, because like people would kind of have that divide when thinking or talking about them. But this was like really getting into that territory of these voice actors are doing like they're really good actors. So it's kind of cool. And then we'll talk about it in a bit, but both Baker and Johnson, the voice actors, make an appearance in the show.
And they knock it out of the park.
Yeah, they do a great job. So yeah, in the game, Ellie was initially supposed to be Joel's daughter, but then they thought that it would be too limiting in terms of character development. So they kind of changed it up and then pretty much made the entire game around that. Let's see. Various other characters were influenced by the story progression, and I guess other major characters were changed drastically during the making of the game too. But I won't really get into too much else because of spoilers. I'll touch back on it towards the end of the episode. But yeah, there's like I said, there's so much on this game. It's even having never finished it, like just learning about it really makes me want to go finish it now. So yeah, now that I've talked for a half hour straight, I'll turn it over to Elmer.
Well, believe it or not, by the sound of it, the blog, the vlog, the recording, whatever you want to call it, but the actual recounting of the making and the process of making this TV series is longer than the actual series summary, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because it was only there's only 9 episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
They really crammed a lot in.
They really did, and you know what? I will say, not to jump the gun too much, but I will say what they were able to actually get across and get done in that is quite incredible. Because I had no idea that the Last of Us game was as big as it was. I thought it was more like, well, Uncharted in terms of it's just like, oh, here's the sequence, get from point A to point B without getting seen or hurt or caught or whatever, and just kind of going through there and then having a couple of scripted moments like, you have to, grab a ladder, or you have to do this or do that, or you have to heal somebody or whatnot. So, yeah, no, I didn't know that it was as big and maybe not quite a sandbox, but as large as it is. And I was just like, holy shit, you were able to stick this into 9 episodes?
Yeah, like I think you said, like, I didn't realize that the game was like literally going across the country from east to west coast. It's like, yeah.
I thought maybe it was like part of the eastern seaboard, but yeah, not Boston to Wyoming. It was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Boston to California, then back to Wyoming. But no, the series on here, Neil Druckmann, who Lebbi brought up earlier as being one of the main creative forces and voices of the series. He originally made sure that he was attached as much as possible to his original idea for if they tried to get a movie off the ground. And they fell in development hell pretty early on. 2016 was when they first announced that they were optioning a film for it. And with Druckmann able to look over and see all the bullshit that was happening with the Uncharted series at that time, he's going, I need to be attached, and that's the only way we're going forward with it.
That's a good idea. He's really, really smart.
Because of that, Druckmann actually ended up reaching out to a guy by the name of Craig Mazin. And Mr. Mazin here, when I found out that what this man has accomplished, I went, dear God, that might be one of the most scattershot careers I've ever heard. Mr. Mazin started out working actually at the Disney Corporation as basically a mailroom runner, and started making his way up middle management, and then became a screenwriter there. I mean, he probably always had screenwriting aspirations the entire time, but just to know that, you got your foot in at the ground floor level of Disney, and now you're one of the showrunners of The Last of Us. That is incredible. But this gentleman also wrote the screenplay to the 1997 movie Rocket Man, which is basically Pee Wee Herman got sent to Mars. After that, he also wrote the screenplays for Scary Movie 3, Scary Movie 4. He also produced and directed, along with writing, Superhero Movie, The Hangover, Part 2, Identity Thief, The Hangover, Part 3, The Huntsman, Winter's War, and soon-to-be Borderlands, the film adaptation of the video game, which I will come back to in just a moment.
Yeah, it's like he did some real raunchy stuff, just raunchy, stupid stuff, and then all of a sudden started producing hits.
2019, he went on to write and help to produce the Chernobyl series for HBO, which, if anybody hasn't seen that, they need to check that out, because it is probably one of the best drama, history, and horror series I've ever seen. It is incredible what that show is able to get across. So for the fact for Druckmann to go, I want this guy on my team for my series, I cannot say that I blame him, and I'm probably the best choice possible. But to go back to Borderlands quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So you told me you had no idea that they were doing a Borderlands movie.
Well, I heard a rumor that they were going to make one, but I didn't know if it was like actually happening yet or what.
So they shot it back in 2021, and the cast for this movie is insane. Kate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, Jack Black is in it.
He's playing Claptrap.
Okay, yeah, I remember hearing that.
Edgar Ramirez, Bobby Lee, Haley Bennett, and Gina Gershon are all in this movie. They shot it back in 2021. Apparently, at Comic-Con last year, they showed like a 2-minute segment for it. It was acquired by Lionsgate. And then they went and they did test screenings back in November of last year.
Oh, boy.
We have still not seen a trailer for this movie. And by the sound of it, back in January, they announced a few weeks of reshoots. With a different director, with Tim Miller of the first Deadpool movie fame coming in to do the reshoots. That's because the original director is off working on another movie right now. Lebbi. Are you ready for this?
Oh, boy.
Our good friend Eli Baseball Bat from Inglourious Basterds Roth is directing this.
Okay.
The guy who gave us both of the, what do you call them? Hostel, as well as, well, both Hostel movies, as well as the first Cabin Fever.
I guess it could be good. I'm not going to get disappointed just yet.
I was saying it's 3 good movies.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not a big fan of Green Inferno, folks, and I'm definitely not the biggest fan of Knock Knock, so my apologies, but...
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
But I mean, that cast is amazing, though. I mean, Kevin Hart as Roland is one of the most inspired casting choices I've ever heard.
Yeah, but a good cast can still be given a shit hand, especially, and I don't know what the reason is for video game adaptations to have to suffer so much. Maybe it's because there's, intellectual property holders that want things portrayed a certain way and they're not willing to budge. But unless they're unless it's given to the right person, I think there's always that chance that thought in the back of my mind that it's just gonna be ruined.
I kind of see what you mean, where it's more the situation of, it's like, okay, we need somebody who understands the material and is close enough to it to understand that this is how it needs to be portrayed and come across, but still feel like the original thing that everybody knows and loves.
Yeah.
So no, I can kind of see that. It's the difference between, say, the original Super Mario Brothers movie, where it's just like, well, we need dinosaurs, mushroom people, and
Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper coked out of his mind, and we need a portly little West Londoner with the thickest Cockney accent you ever heard to sound like he's from New York, which Bob Hoskins had a pretty good New York accent. Anyway, it's the difference between, say, like that and, well, it's funny for me to say it, but the Sonic movie. Just because that actually felt like, people who played the Sonic games growing up as kids and stuff like that. So, yeah, I can really see how definitely, even if you have the best cast available, it's all got to come down to, how well you're able to adapt that material.
Yeah, I'd say, let's see, how many like genuinely good video game movies have we talked about so far?
Well, I mean, how many by Yuva Bowl alone?
No, I'm talking about the actually good ones. So like we had,
that's what I meant.
We had the Sonic movies. Those were both pretty good. What other one was good? We've kind of taken a dump on every single one of them.
And well, wait till and hell, we still haven't even done Mortal Kombat 2021 yet.
Oh yeah, well, I was just gonna say the original Mortal Kombat, as bad as it is, at least it has a lot of charm to it. Yeah, it's pretty tough out there, filmmakers. I know you're listening.
Call us. We've got ideas. We can do that punch up for you if you like. The two guys sitting next to each other, one of them in a Kirby t-shirt, the other one in a Mortal Kombat 2 t-shirt. Yes.
No, that's just the thing that video game movies, like, even the Halo show, that got close, but it just
visually it was there. It was just
there's
there,
always someone in production that's just out of touch enough to ruin it.
Can we make a reference to Uber in this episode? Grandpa, just go sit in the back and we'll get you some coffee and donuts.
See, we gotta have more studios like Square Enix who mess up their video games so bad that they put more effort into making their movies, that they're actually good.
I don't know. I mean, we both watched The Spirits Within. I mean, come on, we know.
But Advent Children, we talked about that. That was a good one. We haven't done Kingsglaive yet, but that's a good one. We haven't talked about there's 2 Final Fantasy animes from the 90s. I've only seen one of them so far, but it's really good. So, yeah, I mean, it's not unheard of to have good video game properties, but anyway, I feel like I've gotten us really off track here.
That's fine. No, if anything, you helped to pad out my runtime. So Maison then basically took a look at the material that Druckmann had put forward, saying, hey, we want you to try to do this for a movie, and Maison looked at him and says, this is way too much for a movie. Why don't we do a series? And he goes, I just did Chernobyl, right? And apparently Druckmann just went, why do you think I called you? And apparently, it was after just a week of those 2 meeting for the first time, they made the pitch to Warner Brothers. I want to say, I think they said it was about 2020 was in the original, when they originally just started getting into contact with it. And I mean, let's put it this way, it was fully in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic that they basically set up the storyboards for it. They cast it, they set everything together, and they were shooting by the midpoint of, they said July of 2021 they started filming it.
Wow.
And hilariously, they filmed all of it in Canada. I still have no idea how the hell they found parts of Canada to look like Texas for a little bit there. But then again, I'm like, it's 2003 Texas. Yeah, I can see how that would look like modern Canada. But it's they filmed the entirety of it up in Canada, which really helps to give it sort of that sort of, not to make fun of our Canadian brethren out there, but this sort of flat, sort of lived in, just... normality is the best way I can describe it. When you watch a TV show and you're like, oh, that's a set, that's a set, that's a set. When, people are just even walking around outside, or, oh, that's a street dressing or something like that. In this, when people are walking on the street, you're like, yeah, that feels lived in. That feels... Yeah,
and, I was talking about this. So we've had a friend of mine come over and watch this with us. And, when they're walking down the street and all the cars are dirty, run down, torn apart, there's vines growing all over them, and there's like dozens and dozens of these cars just lining the streets. And I like turned to my buddy, I'm like, how long did that take? Like somebody has to go through and dress all those cars up with those vines and stuff. It's impressive, and it looks so natural and like random. Like, I don't know, stuff like that would stress me out if I was in charge of that.
And I guess I should say, I don't mean to say that Canada is a lifeless wasteland looking like something outside of Chernobyl. I just mean that, it's more like buildings out of the Midwest in a way. So they're under 6 stories at a time, and they're just sort of like garage space and stuff.
Canada is also the perfect place for nothing because most of the country is uninhabited. So... but yeah, it's just that sort of thing blew my mind. Even like, so in the game, like one of the first things, like after the infection, after you like leave the quarantine zone or whatever, you see like 2 huge skyscrapers, like one's toppled over leaning on the other one. They even did that in the game, and I'm sure or in the show, I'm sure it's like CG and stuff, but like they really nailed it, except for one scene where you can see part of the camera crew. But
coincidentally, I'm about to move into casting here. Something similar to that happened on The Mandalorian Season 2. Another Pedro Pascal. Oh, no. The crew member standing in the background of a shot.
Oh.
And you flat out see him, and you're just like...
Yeah, well, and that also happened on Game of Thrones.
Oh, that's right.
Another Pedro Pascal show.
Oh, he was barely on. I think he got his head cut off or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't watch Game of Thrones. But...
Nothing against Game of Thrones. It's just one of those things where I just fell off of it in the first like 4 episodes and never got back onto it. But,
yeah, same here. I think I watched the first 4 episodes. Yeah, exactly. And then it's just like, eh. But full offense, Game of Thrones fans, come fight me.
Door gets kicked open. It's Bill Belichick. It's like, oh! But kind of one of the weird kind of coincidences for it is that Bella Ramsey, who plays Ellie in this, and then Pedro Pascal, who plays Joel, they both have had parts on Game of Thrones. However, not the same series. Pascal is on the first series. Ramsey is on, or I'm not sure if she still is on House of the Dragon, or at least so I'm told. Which are both HBO, or I should say both series of that are HBO series like that. So it's kind of funny how it's just like, oh, they're keeping the same in-house people under contract still, I see. Pull them out of mothballs that way. But as somebody who, I've known who Pedro Pascal is over the past few years, seeing him in such great films as Sicario, him having fantastic roles, even though the movie ain't the greatest, in the second Kingsman movie, playing Tequila, which was just inspiring right there. Was it something Frontier? I don't know. It was just basically the Pedro Pascal, Oscar Isaac bromance movie to me the entire time I was watching that one.
You mentioned The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh, yes, where he is fantastic in that. But
yeah, I think that's actually the first thing I saw him in.
But even with him on The Mandalorian, I will say it just seems like this entire year with him just doing press for The Last of Us, everybody has realized, oh dear God, this guy's like the most wholesome, awesome dude possible, and
he's a weirdo.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I started watching a few interviews that he was in, and the dude is goofy. He's a big old goof.
His Hot Ones episode, oh my God, we were crying. Although hilariously, when that Hot Ones of him came out was also the day, I want to say it was the premiere episode of The Mandalorian Season 3. And also, it was right after The Last of Us season finale, so we had a 3-way in terms of watching... oh, no, never mind. Last of Us had ended. No, we watched Mandalorian premiere, then we watched the Hot Ones, and then we went out and watched Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And I'm just getting a full dose of Pascal right here. Holy cow.
Yeah, the internet has like justifiably fallen in love with him, which... you can say I'm just a sheep and going along with the trend, but I really the dude is so charming and wholesome. Can't not love the guy.
And then the rest of the cast of the show is made up of a bunch of great character actors that they've pulled out of the woodwork to have in some of the episodes, just single episodes at a time, and you're like, how did you afford this? And then you look at the budget for the show and you're like, oh, I get it.
Well, and then even Bella Ramsey, a lot of fans were, or maybe even still are, divided on whether or not she's a good fit for Ellie. And I will admit the first couple episodes I was a bit unsure of her as Ellie. But she really grew into that character and did a hell of a job. And I shouldn't be saying she, they, and they're I don't know, because they're not, they're not such a lookalike to the video game Ellie. It made a lot of people mad, but of course that got turned into Ellie's not as attractive as she is in the video game, and it's she's 14, get over it. Gross, dude. But Bella Ramsey, they nail it. So
yeah, that was kind of the one thing, is I remember hearing a little bit of discourse. You're like, oh, Bella Ramsey, they don't, oh no, why doesn't Ellie look as good as she did in the game? And it's just you do realize Ashley Johnson was in her 30s when she did this, right? And on top of that, that's supposed to be a 14-year-old child?
Yeah. Yeah, so just stupid and weird and gross. Just like the internet, just how you expect the internet to be.
Thanks, Reddit. Anyway, Gabriel Luna's in this playing Uncle Tommy, who is also fantastic in the few episodes that he pops into here, there, and everywhere. I guess how much more do we really want to talk about production side? Because there really isn't too much more.
Yeah.
But do we just want to try to hop into the series, or what do we want to
Yeah,
do?
let's talk about some key moments. This is where I'll give a spoiler warning. It has been a few weeks since the series ended, and the series is more or less the same story of the game. So if you haven't played the game and haven't finished the series, this is your spoiler warning.
Also, what the hell are you doing listening to us? What? No.
Yeah, I mean, this story's been around in the public for a decade now, so I think it's safe to talk about it.
Oh, no, I just meant more so. I just know that one friend of ours doesn't play video games very often, and they don't watch TV series. So
Oh,
this is one of those things. Hey, Thor!
Oh, yeah, Thor. Well, he'll
appreciate it.
he'll be okay, I think. So yeah, obviously it's like a zombie apocalypse. So I think we talked about it. So yeah, it starts out as infected flower, but yeah, so it's a version of cordyceps, which is basically fungus that turns people into zombies. And I don't know if it was portrayed this way in the game, but in the movie, it's like you can even see the little fungus growing out of people's mouths as they're trying to infect other humans.
While I can't say if that is in the game or not, I can say that is actually what it is with the ants, which is pretty cool and pretty gross looking. But yeah, no, it's an interesting concept for a zombie apocalypse, so to speak. There was a book actually back in the I can't remember if it was the late 70s or early 80s, called The Fungus, actually. And I really want to read it. It's got one of the coolest, grossest looking covers you've ever seen, and you just know that it's just the cheapest smut possible. Like, this is like sub-Dean Koontz level of like writing, and I'm like, I kind of want to find a copy to read it, but apparently that's part of where some of these other zombie premises of using fungus and stuff like that, it's actually kind of come from in the past few years. Huh. And actually, the imagery of the different types of the infected, like stuck up against walls and growing into it and stuff like that, apparently the guy who wrote 28 Days Later, and I cannot think of his name off the top of my head right now, the guy who directed Vox Machina, wrote and directed Vox Machina, the Annihilation adaptation, also a guy who wrote Dread. Why can I not think of his name? But for the movie Annihilation, there's a sequence where they're walking down into a pool area in this infected sort of like quarantine zone, and there is somebody who is actually stuck to a wall, just like the actual imagery that's in the series here, but is also in the game series, which is kind of cool. Let's see how that kind of feeds back into each other, that same sort of styling.
Cool. But yeah, the like the start of the game and the first episode of the show are really like the show took some liberties and changed some events in the timeline around to like make it fit, but like the first episode is pretty accurate to the first part of the game where it's just your everyday, and then the breakout starts happening, and Joel and his daughter and Joel's brother are all trying to like get out of the city and find a way out, and there's like panic in the streets, explosions and things like that. They end up where like Joel's daughter hurts her ankle or something, and Joel's carrying her around, and they end up getting stopped by like military and shot because there's an outbreak going on. And Joel survives, but his daughter dies, and then it basically cuts to, just like in the show, like 20 years later, Joel's all old and it's like smuggling things in between quarantine zones and stuff like that. But then basically they get tasked with bringing Ellie to like a medical facility because she's immune to the virus. And yeah, the whole show and game is basically just getting yourself in different scenarios, trying to avoid the zombies and stuff like that. There was that character Tess that dies pretty early on in the show. I believe she's around a little bit longer in the game, but yeah, we of course got to talk about our favorite characters, Bill and Frank. And this is my favorite part. I think my favorite episode in the series as well is Nick Offerman, aka Ron Swanson, plays Bill, who is uh, a doomsday prepper in a small town where the town gets evacuated and or killed, while he stays and hides in his basement, and he ends up fencing off the entire town, rerouting power and gas and water and all that stuff, and just living a simple life on his own. Ends up meeting his lifelong partner and lover Frank, and the episode is like one of the best and most progressive episodes of television in existence, I feel.
Not only what I would say, I mean, let's put it this way. Here's how I like to look at it. Not only with what it's able to progress in terms of what you go into that episode and you're just like, oh, it's Nick Offerman. Of course, it's just going to be Nick Offerman playing Ron Swanson.
Yeah, playing a prepper. Right?
And all of a sudden you realize, oh, there's actually depth and pathos and
God.
so much emotion to this character. You're like, oh my God.
That episode had me bawling. And there's there's this guy on TikTok. I wish I could shout out his name, but it's, a little video of him watching that episode of the show, and when Bill finds Frank in the hole, it's like, this is a stranger, don't let him out of the hole, kill him. And then a little while later they're in the house, it's like, oh, don't let him shower in your house, this is a strange man, like, don't trust him like that. And then it's like, well, don't kiss him. And then a little while later it's like, don't you fall in love, Bill?
But that's the other funny part, or I would say the funny part, the other crazy part about the episode. It's not only just, a great love story set in the post-apocalypse between two men that are playing two roles that neither of those two actors normally do, but simultaneously, it's a good love story, which is the crazy part, and I'm no sucker for romance, so... Yeah, no, by far the best episode of the series. It's going to be the one that everybody remembers of this show.
Yeah, and that reaction of like, this is a stranger, don't let him in your... That was like, Radiscord in chat just said the same thing too. Like, that was like my reaction, like, the entire way was like, don't trust this guy. Why are you letting him in your house? Why are you feeding him? Why are you giving him your wine? And then it's like, why are you falling in love?
Hi, Bill. Why?
Don't you think for a second that he doesn't love you, Frank? Yeah, no, but yeah, that episode ends with them, Frank is sick, and it gets to that time where Frank asks Bill to basically end it for him, and then Bill ends up ending it for both of them, and it's just like, oh man, I cried so hard. That was such an emotional episode. So good. So good. Yeah, how about what was your favorite episode?
I'm gonna go with that one as well. Although I will say the one where they are in it's the one where are they in Cleveland, or where are they, where they meet the brothers?
Yeah, I can't remember where they are, but
that one to me is my close second favorite, just because of the amount of carnage and actual action they have in that episode.
That scene at the end where they're all the zombies are bursting out of the ground.
Oh God! Well, no, we're already talking about spoilers, but yes, the bloater coming out. Oh my God, that was awesome. I mean, the casting of that episode itself was fantastic. Meredith. Oh shit, I cannot remember her name. It's Rose from
2.5 Men.
2.5 Men for people who that's where they know her best from. Who is always fantastic whenever she pops up, and she, I'm watching this. I'm like, I never thought she'd make for a good warlord, but here we are.
Yeah, I'm used to seeing her in like more goofy or throwaway roles, but yeah, she killed it. And that episode, that was definitely a really good one because of the action, like. Other episodes have a little bit, they run into a clicker or two. This one was like swarms of them. It was really cool. Yeah, I like that one a lot.
And I mean, just learning about the history of the brothers and stuff like that, it's just like, oh God, that's a stab in the heart.
Yeah, and I like how, the beginning of it's Joel's transporting Ellie just because it's what he's hired to do. She's just cargo. And then, she ends up saving his life, and he ends up saving hers, and they grow closer. Now he thinks of her like as a daughter again, and it's like just like in the game. Apparently, like the whole thing is like about their relationship, and it's really like it was portrayed really well.
Part of the casting process, that was one of the things that they did, is they specifically wanted to make sure that that sort of bond
That
between
chemistry,
them
yeah.
worked really well. So apparently during the casting process, they would have each of like the finalists like act alongside a couple of the other actresses, like the actors and the actresses would act alongside each other a couple of times to try to get an
Try to find a
idea
match.
and just to try to find that perfect match for it.
Well, then you see, like I watched a couple episodes with Pedro and Bella in interviews together, and yeah, they're just
The same thing.
yeah, they're adorable.
If anything, it's swapped. If anything, Bella Ramsey is more like Joel, and Pedro Pascal is more like
Yeah.
Ellie in real life.
Yeah, he's the goofy one, like saying all the puns and stuff, and Bella's like over it.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Here we go
no,
again.
it's cool, but yeah. So I mean, the show crams and everything where they meet up with Joel's brother. They, you know, Ellie ends up finding out about Joel's dead daughter and stuff like that, and then, I guess the show kind of really wraps it up nicely with the end where they're, they get to the lab to get the cure from Ellie, and Joel finds out that it involves killing Ellie to get it, and she doesn't know that yet. So,
You, as one person who's had to have multiple biopsies before, I bet you can definitely appreciate the sense of, oh, hey, thanks for testing me first
Right.
before you did the full excision.
right. So like, yeah, Joel's like, demanding to see Ellie, and they're like, no, you can't see her. And once that happened in the show, I was like, oh, he's gonna kill everyone. And then he does. He just hallway after hallway, room after room of this hospital, just with his rifle, kills every single person in there.
Part of me, when I'm watching this, goes, well, congratulations, you probably killed the last of the best scientific doctors' minds
Yep.
on the United States, on the North American continent. Thank you very much, Joel. But part of
Yep.
me also just goes, they do kind of deserve it.
Yeah, kill him. Yeah, kill him.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, oh man, like now there's definitely not going to be a cure, and yeah, like you said, now all this talent and hope for the future of the world is also dead. But also, that's like your best friend / daughter they're about to kill. So
We put a giraffe together.
yeah, but then he ends up lying to Ellie and telling her that.
Her godmother, pretty much, who is the one who originally tasked Joel with delivering her to them. He tells Ellie that no, she got out of there, she escaped, I didn't see her, or something like
Yeah.
that. When in actuality, he guns her down pretty quick.
Yep. Which good.
Yep.
But yeah, so the series ends with them getting to the next town, and Joel, like Ellie saying, like, you have to promise me you're telling the truth, and Joel says, of course I am, when he's not. But I'm sure he's afraid, like, well, if I tell Ellie that they had to kill her to get the cure, she would probably volunteer to do that, so he can't handle that anyway. The show, so good. They wrapped up the show with the end of the game, which is nice because there's already going to be a season 2 and there's a second game. So I think they might even start working on a third game so that they can do a season 3.
By the sound of it, because when I did a little bit of my reading earlier today too, it sounds like they are going to try to split up the second season, so it expands into the second one, like the earlier stages of it.
Gotcha.
Or maybe has a little more prequel-y kind of stages to it. Just because they're like, there's so much content in the second one. They're like, we don't want to expand too fast. And we don't want, as they said, we don't want the games or the TV show to eclipse the games in terms of continuity. So
Gotcha. Yeah, but this is where I want to bring it back to the game for a little bit because I didn't want to spoil this so early on in the episode. But for the game, they actually intended the ending to be like for you to have like an option with the resolution of the story, where you could either choose to, you could choose to have the ending that the game did, where you kill everyone in the hospital and escape, or to choose to like, find the cure and go that route. But then they ended up scrapping that idea and saying, no, that's not who the characters would never do that, right? Like Joel would never do that, so they had to rewrite that part.
That would be the worst achievement to get. I feel like you should hear your doorbell ring. Amazon would be standing there with a sign and an Amber Alert ready for you when you make that choice.
Yeah. Oh. So that was a good decision there, but yeah, I guess we can wrap it up. I think you know what we're gonna say, but Elmer, was this a bop or a flop?
Oh, this was a bop and a half. This was by far my favorite piece of TV I've seen so far this year.
Oh man,
it was fantastic. Craig Mazin, I may have some misgivings with some of your filmography and writing here, there, and everywhere towards the middle point of your career, but dear God, man, you did Chernobyl, which, like I said, is one of my favorite things to come out ever, and now the Last of Us adaptation. Dude, you're knocking it out of the park, man.
Yeah, and I'm sure other people have said it too, but this is I think the best video game adaptation in existence. It is so good, such a bop. I've seen every episode at least 2 times now, and it hasn't gotten old. I'm so pumped about it. Can't wait for season 2. If you haven't seen this show yet, what are you doing? Quit being a goof and go watch it, because it is fantastic.
No, it has definitely set a new benchmark for it that we will see this next week, whether or not that Super Mario Brothers, the movie, is going to be able to pretty much meet that hurdle.
I'm sure the Mario movie at least is going to be good. At best is going to be great. But I don't think it's going to come close.
Oh, no, it's not going to come close. No, it's still that one I'm very excited for. I mean, you don't get an all-star voice cast like that without having some good talent behind it.
Right. Yeah, so with that, I guess I'll let you guys know if you're listening to us audio only and you want to catch our videos, you can find us on YouTube, or you can find our other podcast sites to listen to us on. Go to gamelink.click. You'll find all our links there. We haven't discussed what we're going to be talking about next, but we might have to revisit another stinker.
Or potentially we're going to see within this next week. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to miss out on next Sunday due to Anime Detour coming up this next week. And so if you're in the Minnesota area, you might be able to meet me over at Anime Detour. So if you see me, just yell, "Hey, Elmer, you asshole," and I'll get the idea. Just don't walk up to me and say, "Hey, asshole!" So, thanks. Yeah, we'll see what we could potentially do. We might be able to pull off a miracle and pull Mario Brothers out of our ass. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So yeah, we'll end the podcast here, but we'll stick around to do chit-chatting with everyone on the live show here. So I'll run the outro quick, and we'll
play that funky music, white boy.